Hello friends I made this for. Welcome back to my channel, or if you've never been here, what's up? I'm pretty lazy, I don't edit these, and so welcome to my hot takes on tarot, oracle, cards, and everything else. I usually do reviews on tarot decks, but today is a very special day because we have one of my favorite oracle decks, the Sacred Symbols Oracle deck. So let me just start by saying, I'm not an oracle deck kind of person. I know that there is a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions on that. So if you are a strictly oracle type of person, welcome, hello. But if oracle is something that you're really into, I apologize. I'm going to bash oracle decks a little bit before I get started on talking about Marcella Kroll's deck, which I absolutely love. So there's a huge influx of tarot decks in the world, but probably more so than that is there's a huge amount of oracle decks. And there's a lot of reasons for it, right? With tarot decks, it's way more strict. I mean, there's certainly people who put out only, let's say, maybe the majors in a tarot deck, but the ultimate truth is, with an oracle deck, you can really live by your own fucking rules. And because of that, I think there's been a big influx of oracle decks. Now, don't get me wrong, when I first started my tarot journey, I actually started and I've talked about this before, with an oracle deck that's also a tarot deck, because I started as a baby witch with the oracle cards. And of course, I think that's really common for a lot of us. You get into oracle decks first because they're more, well, they're easier to get into. You have a booklet that is always right there and ready to explain away what the artist or the writer was thinking. But because of that, there's a lot of oracle decks out there, probably more so than tarot decks, and if I gotta be honest, a lot of them are very heady, very, what's the word? Woo-woo for even my taste. And as a spiritual person who is into Reiki, astrology, crystals, and all that bullshit that I love, that bullshit that gives me life, there's definitely aspects in there or certain sectors of my own spiritual world that I'm like, it just doesn't vibe with me. Sorry. It just doesn't vibe, and that's totally fine. I think for all of us who are in the spiritual community, you find what you like, you discard what you don't, and that's totally cool. But for that reason, I really don't use almost any oracle decks at this point. I have a very, very slim selection that I actually think are worth your fucking money. And today, this is one of them. The Sacred Symbols for Divination and Meditation Oracle deck cuts through the wordy bullshit. Like, a lot of these oracle decks have a lot of different ways of saying pretty much the same thing for maybe 20 cards to 27 cards. Now, I also know that there are artists that put out tarot or oracle decks and tarot decks, but oracle decks in particular. Amanda Sage has a deck that I'll probably one day grab, but really only as a collector, not necessarily as, oh, I want this deck for reading, I want this deck for myself. I'll probably get that deck not for anything but to look at her beautiful art because I love it, and that's totally a valid reason to get an oracle deck as well. But this is not one of those decks. This is a deck that I use professionally. I use it with clients, and I use it sometimes for readings on YouTube because it's a really good deck and it's not very heady. It's been sitting on my altar and I haven't pulled it out for a while, so it was a little dusty. But it's not because it's not a good deck. I just usually go through cycles with my certain decks, building a relationship, moving back and forth between the different decks that I have grown to love. So, like I said, there's a lot of oracle decks that have like angels and saints and all these different people, and like you can connect with them, and that's really cool. And there's this huge description that comes in a thick booklet that you have to pull out and you have to use it to read the deck. And for me personally, I don't like that. I want to be able to pull out a card in a reading with a client and have the most clear channel possible so that I'm not having to pull out the book. Now, this deck does come with a book. I'm not going to rate this deck. I'm just going to tell you what I love about it, not like my indie tarot decks. And actually, there is one thing I should say. This is an indie oracle deck. There's a lot more good indie oracle decks than there are mass-produced oracle decks, in my opinion, honestly. Just like in tarot cards, I prefer looking at indie tarot decks because I like something that feels produced, handmade, and made with care and love and attention. And that's what this deck is. Not only is it easy to read because it's very straightforward, it's very to the point, it is sacred symbols. If you need to read about it, it's no frills. This is a great deck if you are wanting just something very straightforward that you can just connect with, that's not going to have all this wordy shit above your head and being like raising vibration and worrying about all these like heady ideals and like the consciousness of the Lemurian courts. Like, that's really cool if you're into it, but that's not always my vibe. I want to read for people in a way that is as complex as it needs to be, but as simple as it's intended to be, and not overwhelming for someone who I am reading for or for myself. It just kind of cuts to the point. So this is that deck, and it's a great quality deck too. If you are an oracle card reader, definitely recommend getting an indie oracle over the mass-produced kind, because I feel like those as well are more likely to have a lot of cultural appropriation, let's just say. So with this deck, we have a beautiful, and by that I mean like spirit animals and like all of that. I don't know. It just starts to get weird when it's mass produced, right? When it starts to be a corporation sending you a product and not a personal piece, which this, again, is a personal piece that is clearly made with a lot of love. I also follow Marcella Kroll on Instagram. You can find her, Marcella Kroll. I'll put the Instagram and the spot links, whatever, in the box below, so that way you can check out the work as well. I got this box like I do this oracle deck, like I do mini decks, on Etsy. Saved by the Spell is her Etsy page. Really love this creator, really awesome person. This is the 3rd edition that I'm showing you today. There's a lot of different ones out there, and there are 50 cards, as it says right there. As we see, it has the name of the deck on the side. Really beautiful, good quality box that is a little bit more sticky than the 8th House Tarot, like I said. I would still wrap something around this so the cards didn't fall out. I really don't take this deck many places though, because the only decks that go in my purse and my bag I just kind of throw in there are the decks it's a box I don't really care about. And I feel like, you know, I feel like they're secure as well. So I usually take boxes like this in my bag more likely, because this kind of box doesn't fall apart as easily, but you could still put this in your bag and it'd be great. But yeah, sacred symbols. What is it? So like I said, it's very straightforward, very to the point. This is the back of the card. And then what are the symbols? So the symbols, like I said, this is a very simple deck, and I love that. We see simple imagery. We see the numbers. We see the words. For it, this is magic. This is gratitude. Past life. And So we see different symbols, but also animals. This is transmute. Marcella Kroll also has an oracle deck that has animals in it. I don't have that deck personally. I only have the Sacred Symbols deck. Again, I really, truly love this deck. The first time I came into contact with it was when I was working with a beautiful healing practitioner in Philly named Erin Johnson. Definitely recommend her and her podcast, Living Open, if you're interested in some good spiritual connection to tarot and just good conversations in the spiritual community. But yeah, really simple things. And in fact, this was the card that she pulled for me, guides. So we see that it's very straightforward. There's color. There are symbols here. And so to me, this is the kind of deck that you can pull out and go, you know what, I just need a card for the week, a card for even a yoga practice. Sometimes I like to pull cards before I do a yoga practice to kind of connect with what's a theme in my practice that I want to come back to, and I find myself getting stuck in a pose, or I feel like, oh, I can't do this, or, you know, when I'm in ceremony, in sacred circle with friends, transformation, pretty great. And so because the images are really simple, they can be a really good thing to come back to. I think the drawings are beautiful because, again, they're just really simple and straightforward. If this feels like it's too straightforward for you, I can totally understand that. But I am not that kind of person. I think they're just the right amount. And so I really enjoy what this deck has to offer. But there are certain symbols in here that if they do have connections to certain backgrounds, maybe religious groups, it has a book to kind of help break down what everything is, where these things come from, and why. So straightforward water. This is the alchemy symbol for water. Release. This to me, I could look it up, but it looks like cord cutting. Safe travel. There's just a lot of good imagery here from a lot of different cultures, but here's what I also love about this deck as far as like the cultures that are shown and how it make sure to navigate where some of these energies come from, right? So that it doesn't feel like appropriating to me. Just again, really good, really simple and straightforward, grounded, being grounded. And that one of my favorite symbols that I found through this was protection. I really love this card. But the great thing about the deck, ooh, new moon, so good, right? But one of the great things about the Sacred Symbols deck is that it talks about where these symbols come from. So this is a Viking rune, often used petitioning the gods' protection in battle. So we see in this book kind of like where these spiritual symbols come from, and gives an idea of, like, of course, look how short that explanation is. That's great. That's perfect. This is very straightforward. No heady, wordy shit that is not, it just like gets you wrapped up, lost in the sauce, right? This is a definitely really beautiful beautiful deck because it's really focused on just like getting you the message, not a, oh, goddess, welcome to creator's world. Like, if that's for you, that's great. But I also think it's really important that Marcella gives like context of what these symbols are. So this symbol, the Isis crown, and where it comes from in ancient Egypt. Again, straightforward. This is everything for power. power, you are worthy, you are sovereign. And it has more, but it's still very simple. Drawing this card invites you to take place in the place in the starring role of your life. There's no need to play small here. It's not wordy, it's not overwhelming. It just is what it is, and that's great. I really love a deck that doesn't try to fuck me over with like what it thinks I need to know and like try to woo me out of my experience with the card, right? So that was home. Again, really simple, really beautiful. The colors are just brilliant. This one is like one of the few that's 2 pages, but again, it's large font, so it's easy to read, but it's also not really crazy. It again gives some context. This symbol is comes from the Plains and Great Basin indigenous people. Honored the sign of courage and purity spirit. The ghost dance religion associated revered it as symbol of the coming renewal of traditions. Like, that's great. Now I know who to associate the symbol with. And to connect with that spirit, that connection, those energies, those people, if I want to understand that symbol more and dive into it. Because this is, again, a great deck for putting on your altar. Time, straightforward. It's trust. This one's really interesting, though. But it's definitely, I have to look that up right now. Sorry, everybody. But again, it's really the void. Ooh, trust. Inspired by the nothing in the movie The Never-Ending Story. I love that. Like, I never pulled this card before, so thank you, Marcella, for that. I love it. I truly think this is a great transformative deck. I love that Karmic Path has Saturn. But yeah, this is just a really wholesome deck that is just about connecting in a way that is authentic, connecting in a way that feels like, you know, we're not taking on these symbols in a way to erase people. We're honoring, and we're also just having a little bit more divinity into our spiritual growth, to light the fire in our everyday ego death and your psychic abilities. So focus, bitch. Get some knowledge. Take off the veil. Get this fucking deck. Definitely 10 out of 10 would recommend as far as an oracle deck goes. As I said, there's a lot of oracle decks out there that I think try to pretend that they're smarter or more clever or more spiritual. This is not that deck. This is, I love this card too, Spiritual Cleansing. This is just a good all-around deck. I keep it on my desk, on my altar. I use it in spiritual spaces. I use it for, again, my yoga practice. If I want to pull out a card and just kind of ask, what is with me as I move today? Like, really good stuff. So, again, definitely pull this deck out. Get it if you don't. It's a beautiful deck from a really great creator. Again, Saved by the Spell. I'm going to put the Instagram handle for Marcella and the, let me make sure I'm saying that right. Marcella, yeah. I like second guess myself, I don't know where. But really great creator. Really awesome blessings from this deck. It's real, it's raw. And let's pull a card just to see what the message is today. Soulmate. So, I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope this was helpful for you. I'm going to put this on my altar. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you have this deck, if you love it, or what you think. But with that said, this is a great deck. I would buy it again. If she ends up making a another edition, I'd probably buy that too. And I might be buying the tarot deck that she just put out a few weeks ago. Definitely looks like something that I need in my collection because I'm a sucker for the good shit. But with that said, let me know if you had this deck or if you have any oracle decks you want me to review. I might not buy them, but I will roast them maybe. But last and not least, if you want to connect with me, I'm Subnormal Child on Instagram, TikTok, and you can find me on subnormalchild.com. You can also find me at subnormalchild and Twitter, Facebook, whatever, bitch. I'm here for you. If you want to connect with me, I will pull these cards for you and do a reading. Connect with me at my website, subnormalchild.com. Bless me, bless you, and have a blessed day. Fuck yeah.